Let's add a new feature to our application, which is to allow users to sort the items by 3 different criteria. So basically, we will build this select box right here, and then from there, the user can choose which of these criteria they want to sort the list by. So something that's very common in most web applications. And so let's now build a very simple version of that. So we will do this here right in the packing list component, because if we were to create a new component just for this, then we would add a little bit of extra work with lifting some more state up. And I want to keep it simple here and not to confuse you even further. And so, yeah, it's no problem to just do it right here in the packing list right after this div right here. Or actually, let's do it right here after this unordered list. So let's create a div with the class name that I already created called actions, because here we will have that select element and later also a button to clear the entire list. So inside the select element, as always, we need the option element, which should have different values. And so then later, based on these values here, we will calculate the ordered list. So the first one is based on input. And so these are just some strings that we are making up here. So input is basically by the input order. Then, well, let's write that here first. So sort by the input order. So by the order in which these items were actually placed into the list. Next up, we want to sort by description. So sort by description. So basically alphabetically. And then finally, let's also do, which is very nice, by the packed status. So sort by packed status. Nice. So there it is. Looks great. And so now let's see how we can actually implement this. So first of all, of course, we need to know inside the component, so inside our React application, what the currently selected element here is. And so for that, we will once again transform this here into a controlled element. So for that, we need our 3 steps. So first of all, we create a new piece of state. Let's call this one sort by and set sort by. Use state. And now our default will be the very first one here. So we want that by default, they are sorted by input. And so this input here is exactly this string that we defined here. But it could also be description or packed. And so now let's use that state here as the value. So sort by. And if here I used packed instead, then we should already see that reflected in the UI. So you see that here we now have by default sort by packed status, because now I used this string. Now React is complaining, and that's because we are missing the third part, which is to now attach the onChange event handler so that we can then set the state based on whatever the user selected there. So onChange, and this function here will automatically receive the event, and then we can set sort by using event.target.value. So at some point you will get really used to writing this kind of thing here, and it will become second nature. So this is like a recipe that we always need to follow, and it always works in the exact same way, really. So let's see. And yeah, that works nice. And if we check out our component here, then we first of all need more space. And then you see down here, we now have the sort by status inside our state inside our component. Great. And so now we can work with this. So how do we now get React? So how do we get our application to display the items here sorted by whatever criteria we selected? Well, basically, we will just create a new items which is then sorted by that criteria. So we are not going to manipulate the original items array. That state should stay unchanged. Instead, we will now use again derived state, because sorting one array can of course be computed based on that initial array. That makes total sense, right? So once again, we will not create a new state variable here, because that's totally unnecessary. We will simply create a new variable, and here actually a let variable. So sorted items. And we're using a let so that now we can simply do a couple of simple if statements. So if sort by is equal to input, then this is the default, right? And so then in this case, we can simply say that sorted items should be just equal to the original items. So this is wrong here, of course. So again, in this case, the sorted items are just equal to the items themselves. So the ones that we receive as a prop here. And so now, of course, in the end, we need to use these sorted items. And that's right here. So from now on, instead of rendering the original items array, we will always render the sorted items. All right. And let's just put some here, socks, a charger. So these are quite easy to write. Yeah, right now only this one here works. So if I do this now, then we get an error, because sorted items is then just this empty variable that React doesn't know how to render. So, well, now I will have to write everything again here. So socks, a shirt, and a charger. All right. And now let's write one if for the other two cases. So if our sort by change is, that's a description, then we will want to sort our items, actually. So sorted items will then become items. And now first we use slice, because with this, we basically take a copy of the array. And that's very important because the sort method is a mutating method. And so if we didn't do this, then the items would actually get sorted as well. So we don't want that. So we use slice dot sort. And now here, I will just write the code because, again, I already explained exactly how this method works in the review of JavaScript section. Now, in this case, since we want to sort alphabetically, we can use the local compare method. So we want to take A, which is basically one object of the array, and then we want to take the description of that, which is one of the properties of each object. And then, since this is a string, we can call local compare, and then here we simply pass in another string, which is b.description. All right, so this is going to work, hopefully at least. And then finally, let's also add the code for our last case, which is by packed. And so something very similar here. Sorted items is going to be equal to items, taking a copy dot sort, and then A and B, which are basically two objects of the array which are being compared. And then since we want to order by the packed status, which is a Boolean, we need to first convert that to a number. So A dot packed minus number B dot packed. And that's it. So let's try this out. So by description, you see that now it's alphabetically. So CSS. And finally, by the packed status. So right now, all of them are unpacked. So let's click, and you see that then it moves to the end. And the same thing right here. Then if I remove it, it will move back here. Great. And of course, we also have our default, which is the input order, which is also the same that happens whenever we are in the packed status and we have none of them packed in. Great. So that's just amazing. We just implemented this simple feature, but also a very common feature, simply by using the power of derived state. So again, we didn't create any new piece of state for the sorted items. The only state that we need is the sort by state, so that React actually has at all times the value of this input field right here. And then based on that, we simply create this derived state of sorted items, which then in the end is what we render onto the user interface. And with this, the only thing that we have left to do is to add this button here to clear the list. And so that's the task of the next video.